You're about to listen to an archived episode of The Night Shift with Zeno Horoman. This is brought to you commercial-free by the Surfcast Podcast. If you're interested in more historical, educational, and entertaining surf fishing content, check out weekly episodes of the Surfcast Podcast available today on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere else you get your podcasts, including www.surfcastpodcast.com.
It is my pleasure to introduce Roy Leyva. He is a personal friend. He is a great fisherman. He is a 3-time Massachusetts Angler of the Year, world record holder. He's got 100 species on his belt. He is one of the most fascinating people I ever met in this sport. Roy, welcome to the Night Shift Podcast.
Thank you. I'm humbled over this. When you first reached out, man, I was like, me, but I don't know.
Dude,
here we are, right?
You're just way too modest. By the time people start listening to this stuff to the end, they're going to realize that you should be having your own podcast.
That's too much work. I just want to fish.
Well, that's the whole point. I mean, just for you guys listening, the first thing that Roy asked when I asked him if you want to do the podcast, he's like, well, let me check the tides and I'll let you know what day I actually have. So his whole life revolves around tides. Listen, you are a fascinating creature, and I'll go into it, my own fascination with what you do. But you had a very unusual start, right? I mean, you grew up in inner city Boston?
Yes, correct.
So you're not a guy from out there on a beach with dad doing surf thing. How did you get started? How did this love start? Because with yours, it's not love; it's a fucking obsession.
Right, and we did. I mean, I'm Cuban, right? I'm Cuban descent. I was born here. My parents came here in 1971, and I was born in 1972. A year to the date, August 8th, 1971, August 8th, 1972, right? And my dad fished. I mean, that's he was 10, 11 years old, and they'd take out a panga, which is like a dory. And he set out into the ocean for, 2-3 days. He's 10, 11-year-old who's gone for 2 or 3 days fishing, and they would salt the fish on the boat and literally come back and peddle it, and feed the family. So, we didn't have a lot growing up. My dad worked 3 jobs. My mom ran daycare, along with taking care of me and my 2 sisters and my brother, who are all older than I am. And, what we did on the weekends was we went fishing because 1, it fed the family, and 2, it was just kind of our pastime, and I loved it. I always loved it as a child. I was captivated by the different things, you know what I mean? Whether it was flipping over rocks and finding crabs and shrimp, or catching just about, flounder, smelt, cod back then, pollock from the beaches, all that stuff. So it was there, and I think I want to say I was probably about 8 years old when I really fell in love with it. I was old enough, that I understood fishing a little more and what it was. And my brother was in the service, and he came home with the fly tying kit and ended up leaving it behind. And he was pretty pissed when he came back from the service because I had gone through all the feathers and everything tying flies. So it was, it's been a progression over the years, starting at 8 years old, And I tell you what, man, when I could drive, as soon as I hit 16, it was just, I wasn't going to be home anymore. And it was just every single trip was fishing.
Where was the most of these trips when you were a teenager and you got a car? Was it in the Boston area?
We fished Boston area a lot. Quincy, Dorchester, the gas tanks, in and around Boston Harbor. I mean, all over it. We didn't do a lot of freshwater. Every once in a while, there was a lake called Lake Cotichuit in Framingham that we'd go to. And I'd fish there, but I really wasn't that much of a freshwater angler starting off. And then Cape Cod whenever we could. I mean, Canal, and then some of the Southside beaches and Nauset and all that. There was no stripers around. That age where I grew up, there was bluefish, there was pollock, there was haddock, there was cod. Those are the flounder, smelt, those are the things that you could catch from the beach, tog, scup, but striped bass was almost non-existent. It wasn't until, I don't know, maybe late 80s, early 90s that I really got into the striped bass fishery. I had always been into it, but I was either too young to walk out on the rocks, my dad and my godfather were probably my two biggest influencers in my life growing up. I had a lot of family members that helped me along. I had an aunt that used to run the marathon and she'd train. So she would take me to Jamaica Pond after school and she'd go run around, do her laps. And I would just walk around fishing. And, at one point she'd come back and she'd be like, last lap. And, I knew I had to pick my stuff up and go. But that came later. I think I was around, I don't know, maybe 11 or 12 then. I don't know, man. It just, that striper fishery and that surf fishery, I could read about it in those years, but we didn't have it. You could go out and catch 16, 15-inch stripers here and there, but we didn't have a fishery. It was gone. It was, the moratorium was on. You couldn't keep striped bass. It had just disappeared. And though the fishing was still good, you could catch, there was still bluefish blitzes and, tog and big monster scup from the beach and cod. We'd go and catch, I'd catch 10 to 15 pound cod from the beach in Boston or Castle Island, So there was a fishery, but it wasn't the striped bass fishery that you read about. And I think it was somewhere around 87 or 88 that I really wanted to become a surfcaster. Like that was my, it was my allure, right? Like the bass are just starting to show around again. And it was like, oh my God, I can catch one. And I hadn't caught my first striped bass until like 88. And it started off, throwing rebels in the beach and off the jetties. And then quickly it was, herring, live lining herring. And I think I went crazy live lining herring in bunker till about, I don't know, 91 or so. But I was finding some big fish. I was finding some 30, 40 pound fish in the mix during that time.
Well, live lining bunker, you're not going to find a lot of schoolies, that's for sure.
No, yeah. And there was a lot of them around back then, and it was, either you snag and drop or you snagged and switch, one of the two. And at some point, I had read all these articles, all these guys, Bob Pond and Gibbs and, even Al and like all these guys, and these guys are fishing the surf and catching these monster fish, not only on bait, but plugs, wooden plugs, handmade stuff. And to that point, Rebels, Rapalas, Yankee lures, Roberts Rangers, like that's the stuff that was in my box, maybe a Gibbs or two. And I really got into the wood. And I'll tell you a funny story is, so my herring fishery, right? I don't know if you remember the van I used to have, big fishing van.
Oh, I do remember that.
Fishing,
yes, I remember
right?
the pictures of it.
So I had put a 120-gallon tank in there, right? I keep Moby Dick alive inside that tank, right? 2 oxygen tanks. This thing was just ridiculous. Like I could go and get herring on Monday and not go fishing until the next following Monday with 1 water change and they'd still be alive perfectly fine. So here I am, I'm fishing herring, and it got to the point where it was a lot of work to keep them alive, regardless of what filling up a 120-gallon tank, trying to find herring sometimes just to put in the tank was hard. Sometimes, I'd have to get them in the Charles River in Boston before I drove to the Cape, or I'd have to drive to the Cape without any and then start looking for herring, and you got 5-6 hours to fish. So one day I had herring that had died. They had died in the tank. And I threw them in a soft pack cooler. It was a rectangle soft pack cooler. And there was a couple of Ziploc bags filled with ice in the bottom. And those herring got hard. They had just died. So when they got that rigor mortis, they were bent in almost a U shape. Not totally U, but there was a bend to them. And they all mostly all of them rigor mortis that way, right? And I got to this spot that I used to fish. It was a little hike out, and it was eelgrass, real shallow water. And I take one of these heron, and I put the hook through the bottom of its mouth up through the middle, right? And I chuck it out there, and I twitch it once to try to give it some life. And this thing kind of does this like 180 slide on top of the water. And I'm like, whoa. And I twitch it again, and it like pops out the other way. And I start working this heron back like it's a plug.
Almost like a spook and a kind of slashing. Right.
Dude, I am on. Like, I mean, these fish are just coming up out of the water behind it. Like, this is chunking at another level, right? So one of the things we used to do on the beach, and it's a little bit backwards, but one of the things we did on the beach was whenever we fished heron dead, we didn't just cut it and chunk it, right? We'd cut behind the head, down past the
stomach.
Past the vertebrae bone, right?
Okay.
So you'd go just past that and then along the bone.
Okay.
So you'd cut the bottom rib cage off, right?
Okay.
Almost all the way to the tail, and then you'd come out. So you'd actually have the complete head and the whole belly strip on there.
Oh, I see. The juicy.
So when you fish the beach, you cast it out, right? Now, most people chunk, they throw out, they leave their rods in their rod holders, and they wait. Me, I always held my rod. The only reason I had a rod holder was so that I could put my rod in there when I caught a fish or when I baited up. And what I would do every 5 minutes or so, I would drag it up and reel tight, right? Just to keep that movement. Because one day fishing low tide, I had reeled my heron in along the bottom, and I watched a bass follow the sinker line all the way to the shoreline. So he could actually pick up that scent in that sand. So we figured if we cast really far and drag our heron in little by little by little, any bass that were coming across would come to that scent line and follow it down to the bait. And we used to outfish people like crazy this way. And a lot of times it was almost like they were watching it. You'd move it a little bit and they'd pounce on it. And once you move that little belly strip on that head would ripple. So it almost looked alive,
Right.
And what we did, you do that. And then at the end of the day, you have a bucket full of just tail pieces, right? Slender tail pieces that were kind of weirdly cut, right? With a chunk of the body.
Right, on the top, so, right.
Well, one day, we're trying to figure out how can we use these. So I grab one and I put a hook right through the top of it and I chuck it out and I'm trying to work it back like I was working the whole heron, right? And nothing. So I decide to cut a line down the middle of it, splitting the tail in two. And we
got a little bit of a flutter coming back, right?
We called them pajama pants because when we casted it, it looked like pajama pants with the little feet because the tails are like split on two ends. Man, you should see the bass we used to catch working those on the surface. It almost breathes. The water pushes those legs open and then it would close and then they'd push them open. They would close. It'd break the surface. And that right there was just like, wow. Like, I can throw something, an inanimate object, and get these fish to feed. And that was my catalyst to throwing lures and just becoming an artificial guy.
Do you think people shy away from stuff like that? Like the stuff that you were just talking about, like that is, first of all, I've never heard anyone cut the bait in that way. So to me, this is original on its own, regardless of who was the first guy that started it. But do you feel like people shy away from stuff like that and they just want to get the shiniest plug instead of, find their own way?
Oh, I agree. I mean, I always tell in seminars, I tell people, just because a plug, you buy something in the store and you read the back of the package and it gives you a way of working it, right? That doesn't mean that's the only way that plug is meant to be used, right? I mean, there's so many things you can do to change the action on that, from hook changes, remove swivels, split rings, add a swivel to it, load it, reverse it. I mean, there's just a million things, put some weight on it. There's so many things you can do to that plug that completely changes the action of it. And that was me growing up. Like I wanted to experiment with everything, and it led me to figure out a lot of fisheries and techniques that, a lot of people weren't doing. And like I said,
I would say that definitely helped you.
And that's just, I think that's what people want easy, I mean, I've worked in the industry long enough now that, whether you're a plug builder or whatever you do in this industry, it's all about ease, right? You want to make it the easiest for an angler to catch fish. If all it takes is for him to cast and reel, then you've got a winner, right? Because that's the easiest thing. And that's what most people are going to shy to, shiny, easy. That's it, right?
Yeah, so, but that is true from the sales perspective. I will have to admit in that. But once you get to a certain level as a fisherman, that shit just goes out of the window because what? Like once you get your spots dialed in, and I'm listen, the fishery has changed over the years. So, maybe some spots that were working 5 years ago are not working now. But when you have your spots dialed in, like my spots where I had them, I mean, I could just go there for 20 minutes. There's no way the fish weren't going to be there. Like, I know they weren't going to be there. But you know what? I know what I can do. What I was interested is what I didn't try. Right. You know what I'm saying? I don't care about 3/4 ounce bucktail on 7-foot rod. I know they're going to take that. They take that every night of the week. But will they take the pajama pants?
Right.
You know what I'm
exactly.
saying? That's the interesting part. You're looking around a crab right by your feet and you go like, wait a minute, let's try this shit. You know what I'm saying? That's like the whole challenge of challenging yourself. And that's how I assume you find all these other kind of answers to but people don't just don't ask questions is my point.
Yeah, nobody says why. Why is the
no, they ask where.
Right. So I did a seminar, my last seminar at Suffern, right? Was it Suffern or was it the Saltwater Show in Jersey? Saltwater Show in Jersey, right? My last seminar there, I did Becoming a Better Striped Bass Fisherman. Packed room. Like usually, like, I do pretty well on my seminars. I don't know why, but people do come to them, right? And I've got a packed room.
The fact that you give them $100 before they show up helps.
Right. I'm handing Brooks' phone number.
Oh God, let's not go there. No. I get in trouble for that. No, all right. So you're in a seminar, full house. Go ahead.
Yeah. So here I am, and I start, this seminar was going to be something different that I've never done before. The thing is, man, we all bullshit, right? To a sense, right? I mean, you can only talk about tides and moons and everybody does it, right? So, I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm going to do a seminar that's a lot more real. I'm going to talk about the mentality that it takes to be a better striped bass fisherman, what you need to know, how much, time in work you have to put into it. Because legitimately, unless somebody takes you by the hand, it's the only way it's going to happen, right? You can fumble on it and get lucky here and there, but you can't get lucky a whole season, right? So I start off this seminar and I'm like, look, if you're coming in here thinking that you're going to learn how to catch 40-pound fish easily, like this seminar right here is going to give you all the tools you need to do the work so that you can go out and figure that out. Half the room picked up and left.
Why am I not surprised?
Like 15 people got up. I was like heartbroken. I was like, holy crap, I thought it was going to go good,
Don't you hate that when you're at the show and people start to leave and you're like, what am I doing wrong? Why are you leaving? Right? What did I say?
But, honestly, I've had 2 people that sat in on that seminar that to this day have messaged me and said, that they went home and they put all that together and they figured out their waters, man. And they're proud of it because they did it themselves. You know what I mean? I just had to point them in the right direction and they took that and they did it themselves. And I think, things earned are better than given. That's just my way.
100%. I would say that the most satisfaction I ever had doing this magazine and all these books and all this stuff is like when a guy comes up to you and go like, I didn't get it, what you were saying when I was reading your book or seminar, but then I went and applied it. And then all the shit just clicked with the waves and, the formation and paying attention to where, the breaks are. And he's like, now I'm just like, I expect to hit in that zone. Like that's, and that's that kind of stuff only comes from experience. You can't bullshit your way through that. You can bullshit your way going to the canal, somebody call you. But when you gotta, find that seam where the current breaks and your plug's got to be in like a 3-foot spot that's the only spot that holds fish, that only comes from experience. I'm sorry. That kind of stuff you can't be shown. And you can't learn that at seminar either.
No, you can't.
And I think to some extent,
yeah.
And I think to some extent, people give hard time to guys that are doing seminars like Alberto or yourself that try to give you tools to succeed. When they don't want the tools, they just want the spot.
Right. And then, it's sad in a way. Like I said, why is one of the biggest components to becoming a better fisherman, right? You got to always ask yourself why. People will fish a blitz and they're blind to why it's going on. They just know there's bass there and there's bait and that's it. But they don't know, what held that bait there. Why was it that bait there in the first place? Why were those bass feeding so heavy? You know what I mean? Like, those are all those why questions that people don't ask. And you don't have to have the right answer for your why. You just have to have an answer so that the next time around, you can put it side by side and figure out, well, wow, is my answer the same?
Why, yeah.
Or do I have to change it a little bit, right? But, it's just like, when you make a cast, if you make a cast and you don't visualize a fish being there, then you're just casting into the water, right? And half the time, that's when you get a hit and you're like, damn it, because you missed it, because it took the reel handle off your hand because you weren't expecting it. Like, every cast you should expect a fish being there, right? You should visualize that fish coming up behind your lure. You should be in tune with your lure. You should be able to know that if a fish swipes at it, what that feels like, that your lure was thumping a certain way and all of a sudden for, tenth of a second, it didn't. What's that mean? All those things, those whys. People just don't ask them. And I think that if they did, they'd be better fishermen.
I think Steve Campo told me, why would I make a cast if I wouldn't expect the fish to be there? He's like, what's the point? Why would I do that?
Exactly. You can wish, right? But,
yeah. And he's like, if I come with expectations that I'm going to catch a fish, then why would I make a cast with a leader that I'm not sure about, or the hooks that are not sharp? So why? It all comes to why. But at the end of the day, he makes a lot of sense. Although I have to admit, certain people like you and Steve and a bunch of other guys operate on a different level than most. And I'm going to say this, and I said this in introduction. Like, I've watched you. Drive. You were with Shimano for a while, right? You were one of their reps for a while.
Yeah,
you were driving a lot, and like, I don't think there was a puddle of water from like New England to Florida where you didn't stop and fish. You know what I'm saying? Like most people, I watched you on Facebook, the progression, and like the dude just made like 20 miles in like 3 days. Like, water must be really good.
Yeah, I have a really hard time going by water. Whether it's freshwater, saltwater, whatever it is, right? I love fishing. Like, I love the act of it. Like, it's just not just catching, but the act of it, the hunt. You know what I mean? I love the hunt. And that's my draw to species. One of my draws to species fishing, right? One was to create a database of my own. Instead of going to a book and reading it and trying to figure it out, I want the experience, right? You look at the ocean and all you hear about, say in our area, right? Well, say here in Massachusetts, right? There's striped bass, there's bluefish, there's false albacore and bonita sometimes of the year. And then there's all those other species that you see on the internet over and over and over again. What's this? Banded rudderfish, you know what I mean? Inshore lizardfish, like all those little things that, they come here. It's not a fluke. This is part of their northern range. But you can read that all you want in a book, but unless you go out and experience it, it really means nothing, and that's always been my thing. Like, I want the experience. I know they're there. I've seen them in encyclopedias, but now I want to catch it, photograph it, and then I want to come back again and recreate that again so that I know that, what it takes to get that species on the line, just in case somebody ever asks me. Or, in freshwater, the way I look at it is breaking an ecosystem, right? And it works in saltwater too. It's like when I was younger, I used to do a lot of scuba diving. and you see certain things scuba diving that you don't know that's going on when you don't scuba dive, right? So say like, the lobster molt, right? So certain times of the year, lobsters molt, they become very soft. So do crabs, and fish know that. They take advantage of that. And that's that quiet bite that happens 1 or 2 weeks out of the season that, if you stumble upon it, the fish were there, but you don't really know why, But if you know when it is or when it's around, at least you can target it and, lobster colored plugs if you want, orange, brown, whatever. But you have that target. And if you can match the hatch, man, it becomes phenomenal fishing.
Yeah,
but it's the same thing with freshwater.
You again came back to the same reason, the question why. Yeah. Unless you ask that why, you're just going to have a good night and you're not going to understand why.
Right. And unless you get lucky again, you'll never recreate it.
How many species have you caught?
Over 500.
Oh, 500. Jesus.
Yeah.
So I think Patrick Sabile is probably higher than you because he's been all over. But he's
over 1,500.
Is he over 1,500? But he's got the same mentality, though. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? Like, he will go, he's a world record holder multiple times, and then he'll go like catch a 3-inch fish because he sees it and he's challenged to catch that fish.
Right.
And I watched him. I said, "We're really going to do this?" He's like, "Oh, we're really going to do this." And then, we're going to have some baguette afterwards. It's like, he's such a wonderful guy. What is the most memorable striped bass for you? Is there one, or is there one blitz or fish or event?
I'll have to say probably the last big fish I killed is probably the most memorable, and you'd probably be like, "Oh, it's your 50-pounder," but no, it's the last one I killed. And I'll tell you why. One, it's a crazy story. There was a spot that you couldn't park at. There was no way. I mean, you couldn't, the closest you had to get was probably, I want to say it was about a 2.5 mile walk, right? To get to this one spot from where you could legally park, right? And you literally had to walk the water. And there was a couple jetties you have to go over. There's some rocks. So, I mean, you have to get in the water. So you have to time it right. You have to go at low tide. High tide, you're in people's backyards, and they're not the nicest people. So this spot held a lot of big fish for me. In the late 90s, early 2000s, before for some reason they kind of, they're not. It's just not the same. It's just not the same spot. It holds fish, but it's just not the same. And I used to get some really big fish there. It just took a lot of work, And there was a storm coming one night, and this was, September. Wasn't a moon tide, but we were getting close. And there was a storm coming, and I told my friend, and I was like, "Buddy, like we should go out there." And he was like, "I can't, man." He's like, "I'm tired. I that's all you." And I'm like, "All right, you know what? I'm gonna go." So I go out there, and it was a bitch to get out there in the first place. That was just one of the storm the wind had picked up. The waves, even though the tide was low, were just 3 feet higher. I was getting my butt kicked going out there, and I'm in a wetsuit, so just in case I end up getting washed off the rocks, I float, because I'm fishing a jetty. Like, this comes out into a river that dumps into the ocean, and there's a jetty, right? And I get to the spot, and I'm fishing, and one hell of a night, right? And I'm throwing metal lips. I'm throwing big, huge Dave Bassmaster.
Dave Manzi, yeah.
Danny, yes, right? And all I'm doing is I'm casting in between the bridges, and I'm swinging it across the front of the jetty. And as soon as it goes into that ease of the water on the left-hand side out of the current,
there's a little bit of an eddy there that kind of swings back in, right?
Right. So I'm swinging it, and I'm tired. I mean, my arms are sore. I've got water like everywhere you can imagine. I've got sand like in my underwear, and I'm in a wetsuit. Like, I mean, it is pouring rain. It's the best night you could ever imagine, right? I'm like high-fiving
Only a surfcaster can say that.
What's that?
Only a surfcaster can say that. It's the best night I can imagine.
I'm like high-fiving myself and like screaming at the top of my lungs. Like, I mean, I'm having a blast, the night of my life. And I get this bass, and it's when I took it to the scales, it was 47 pounds, right? It wasn't a monster by any means, but it was a great fish. Great fish for early, late 90s, early 2000s, right? So I get this fish, and I decide I'm going to keep it. I'm going to bring it home, feed my family. I don't eat fish. I personally don't eat fish, but my family does. So I start this 2.5 mile walk back. And it is just, I mean, this is like a northeaster like no other. And I'm just getting pounded and pounded and pounded. And there's this little like park with a parking spot for like 2 vehicles, right? And I see it and I'm like, you know what? What if like I hide the fish?
I've done that.
I take the road to my vehicle and come back.
Yeah.
But I'm totally exhausted. And for some reason, whatever reason it was, I look at the trash barrel that's on the side of the parking lot in the beach, and it's empty. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take a nap. This thing doesn't smell. It's got some water in it. I'm just going to get in there and take a nap.
Inside the barrel.
Okay. Right? So now.
Little Cuban guy sleeping inside the barrel.
No, listen to this, right? So I always carry, my utility, everybody always called me Batman because my utility belt had everything you can ever imagine, right? So I always carry trash bags with me. So I get one trash bag on like a poncho, right? Because I'm in my wetsuit. I'm trying to keep as much heat as I can possibly get. And I put the striped bass in the other. And then I start thinking, I'm like, damn, what if the raccoons get it? So I get the striper and I push it into the barrel. And the tail's sticking out of the barrel, right? And so are my feet. And I turn the barrel so that the wind is knocking up against it. All night you could just hear this like rain. And at some point, like I completely knock out. And I wake up to this dog at my feet. And this guy's like calling the dog. And this guy's freaked out. He thinks I'm dead. And
of course he is. And you're laying on a fish still.
With the fish. So I hear I can feel the dog. And I hear this guy calling it. And he's like, hey, are you okay? Hey, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, and I'm like, days, man, I think I just slept 8 hours. You know what I mean? Like time just went by. Like I knocked out. That's how tired I was. And so I get out and this guy's like, he's the older man. He's like almost having a heart attack. He thought he just found a dead body dumped in a trash can, and so I talked to him for a little bit and, I've got this fish. It's been out all night. It's stiff as a board. Gills are all like just wishy-washy. It's still red, but it needs to get on ice and stuff. And I still got another mile to walk. So I ended up doing that. And before I took it home, I stopped at the bait shop and put it on the scale. And everybody's like driving. People are driving up and coming in the shop, and they're like, "Wow, great fish, man! It's an awesome striper." And I couldn't stop to look at it and just be like, I don't think I can keep these things anymore. One, I love this, you know what I mean? Like I love this fishery so much. And 2, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And for what? I don't eat these. Granted, my parents did, but like they fish. It wasn't like they were dying of hunger, you know what I mean? So that's probably one of my most memorable striped bass catches because it changed who I was at that very, very moment in time.
I think the last fish I took, if I remember, was 30-something pound that died on me at the high flyer out of Cuddy Hunk, and I dragged it for whatever mile. I think one of my arm was longer than the other by the time we got back to the house. And I said, I will never do this again. Now, granted, the fish died on me. We tried to revive it for an hour.
Right.
It just wasn't. It wasn't meant to be. I took such a pounding. I was actually got upset at the poor fish because it just wouldn't live. You know what I'm saying? You're in there trying to revive it. But yeah, at some point, I think most of us get a religion, and not in a way to teach others, but just for our own personal self that we say, this is what I do. You can do whatever you want to do, but I know what I do.
Right.
And,
correct.
I mean, from your story, that is just an amazing story. But the whole thing is of you sleeping in a barrel, and I'm like, yeah, it just blows my mind that you even thought about doing that.
And to top it off, like I didn't carry my bass. Like I'd put them on a strap and then hook the strap to my belt.
Right.
So in that huge surf and stuff, you're dragging this.
So
fish
you were getting
by
pounded around, yeah.
He's getting pounded. You take 3 steps forward and he takes you 5 steps back. I don't know how many times I fell. It was exhausting. And it just, like you said, at some point we get religion. We all do, I think. Every striped bass angler, who spends a lifetime doing this, at some point, unless they're making a living out of it, and some of them even, commercially, some of them even at some point.
I don't think it's necessarily for you to just release every single fish. I think it's okay if you consume. I'm fine. I'm not even saying that. What I'm saying is for some reason, we come to the point where we have a different level of respect for. I'll even call it our adversary. I won't even call it a fish because, to call it a fish, my wife used to say, when a bite was really good, she's like, what the fuck's wrong with you? You caught the same fish every night. I bet you those are the same fish from the night before. Well, I can't help myself. I have to go see if they are. There might be a bigger one tonight. Like you just don't know. You know what I'm saying? If she was right and those were the same fish, then really is no point. There's no point in it. I mean,
no, but you're still go.
Right. But you're right. But there's other reasons why we respect the fish that we do. And I think we get to that point to some extent. Are you enjoying any type of fishing more than others, now that you have done just about everything?
I mean, that's going to be always my first love, the surf, and I struggle now because I'm, at the closest, I'm 2.5 hours from saltwater,
Girls would do that to you.
But I still have a striper fishery in the Connecticut River. I mean, it's not, and there's great size fish in there. It's just different, it just, the atmosphere is different. The culture is different. I don't know, man. I'm really enjoying, the micro fishing and the trout. Like I love rivers. I've come to the conclusion that, my home is the ocean, right? The surf. And my resting place is the rivers and the creeks, because once you walk into a creek or a river, man, it's like you lose time. You're immersed in nature, and there's just, deer and bears and, eagles, and, it's different, man. It's serenity is just like quiet, and it's like there's no people, there's nothing. There's just no sounds of the world usually, except for birds twerping and a woodpecker, and the sound of the water. So I love that now so much.
Out of curiosity, I know that you fish year round, and when other people say they fish year round, they usually, it's a hyperbole. They don't mean that. They just try and impress you. You literally fish the whole year, 365 days. You don't stop ever, from what I've seen. Have you ever tried to stop for whatever reason? And how did that feel?
You know what? It depends, right? So dull days of summer, if I'm on like a daytime bite or something like that, or the fishing's just kind of, it's gotten too hot and I can't really get anything going, I could still catch fish, but it's not, it's not wild. I'm okay with, missing a day here, trying to like give it a rest or something, I'm
not talking about a day. I'm talking about like a month or two.
Oh no, I've never done that. I don't know what that's like.
Okay, all right.
I think it's going like a day or two. Jesus,
no, I said he's going into day. I know guys who haven't gone in months. He's like, I think he just passed out when I say month. I think he fell off the chair. I'm sorry. We're gonna have to go get him off the chair. A month off fishing? Are you fucking kidding me?
I don't even have to say anything. I missed 2 or 3 days of fishing, and Brooke's like, go. Like, she knows it. I don't even have to say anything. She's just like, go.
Are you doing the shark thing? Like, are you enjoying that thing too? Like, we have that resurgence. Well, resurgence. It's fairly a new fishery with these gigantic shark off the beach. They always been to some extent, but now there's a solid, consistent bite that you can count on year after year, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I still go out and target sharks. Yeah, I mean, I do a little bit of everything. Some things I don't exploit as much anymore. Like, I mean, I think I posted a couple shark pictures this year from the beach. Poor Brooke, she had caught her first. Like, she wanted more than anything.
Yeah.
The almost 5 years we've been dating, she's, from day one, I want to catch a shark one, and it's never worked out. And last year, I was down here. We're all working remotely, so I was working from here remotely, and she, on her birthday, she wanted to go, and I didn't have the gear for it. I had to pay some guy $10 at a parking lot for sinkers because I didn't have any. Like, that's how bad it was, and she insisted on going, and we hooked up. I passed her the rod, and in the excitement, she grabbed the line to the rod, and it broke right there and then. So, once I moved up here this year, I told her we'd go, and we did. And, she's an expert now. She's caught her first, second, third, and fourth, and fifth. But I made her wait like a month and a half before she could post it.
Until the bite is over. Oh, no, that's an old trick. But
it's like right now I'm on a ridiculous night bite right now, but I won't tell you what it is or
don't worry. By the time podcast comes out, it'll be January, so we won't worry about that stuff.
Oh, well, I don't know. We'll see. You never know what's biting in January.
Somewhere in a river in Connecticut, you'll find raw. Is there a favorite technique or favorite lure that you like to use in the surf? I'm just out of curiosity. I think everybody's married to something.
I'm a metal lip. I know they can't see that, but you can. I mean,
I see that. I see the little metal lip tattoo on his hand. Yeah, very nice.
I'm just I'm a metal lip junkie.
Okay.
One, I think that, I think it's one of the greatest search plugs there is in the surf.
You're talking to a converted. Metal lip. Yeah.
You throw a metal lip and there's bass around, they will show. They might not always eat it, but they'll show. They'll swirl behind it, swirl behind it, swirl behind it, and eat. But then they're there, right? And you can figure out what you got to do to get them to eat, right? And it just, I love that. Like, I love the whole reaching, looking down, like opening the flap on my bag and looking down and seeing all these little metal lips, like looking up at me, like, pick me, and then you take one on and that sound of the clip when it goes through the eye, right? Like, it just like this, like clip, and then you throw it out, and then that just seductive roll on the surface, man. Oh, like that's corned beef. That's corned beef and cabbage for me, man. Like, that's just like my favorite meal right there. Danny, metal lip swimmer, like
a Cuban boy with a corned beef and cabbage sandwiches. I don't know what the fuck. How do we get here? Like, what's going on here? I thought it'd be pulled pork or something like that. He doesn't eat fish. I mean, I don't get it. But
don't drink coffee either.
You don't drink. You just killed me. But it's okay. I've met some great fishermen that don't drink coffee. Manny being one of them. You also have chef training back.
Yes.
You were a cook, a chef. Yep. What were you? I
was a chef.
I don't quite know the story, but what did you do?
So my dad was a chef. I followed his footsteps.
Okay.
He used to work at the Deaconess Hospital in Boston. Almost my whole life. He was there for 20 something years. And after high school, I did 2 semesters in college to become a marine biologist. I thought that was the route I was going to go. It just didn't, once I got there, it just didn't seem like it was for me. So I took some time off, and my dad was like, well, you ain't gonna sit around the house and fish all the time. Like, you're going to do something. So he got me a job in the kitchen at the Deaconess Hospital, but it wasn't cooking. I was doing dishes. And, my first day on the job, they're like, oh, you're on the line. And I walk up, and this guy rolls up this cart, and he starts taking trays from the rooms and, throwing them down this conveyor belt, and you got to like pick them apart. And I'm like, this is sick people's tray. Like, you know what I mean? I'm just like, I can't do this. Right. So the whole assembly line finished, and we had cleaned everything up, and I walked into my boss's office, and I was like, I can't do this. And he's like, what? And I was like, I can't do this shit. Just like that. Like, literally, I just I never met this man in my life until that day. And I just told him I can't do this shit just like that. And he laughed. And he's like, well, what do you want? He's like, that's your job. And I'm like, I get it. I'm like, don't you got anything else? And he's like, I tell you what. He's like, are you anything like your dad? Can you cook? Can you cut? Are you good with a knife? And I said, I've been watching my dad cook my whole entire life. I've been watching my mom cook my whole entire life. Of like, I've got skills, you know, like I cook. So he put me in functions 1 day a week. So I had to work like 3 days in this assembly line. My God, I thought I was going to die. And then I get this Friday comes and I walk into the function room and the guy's name was Frank, who ran functions. And he's like, look, he's like, I normally would make this myself. He's like, but you being Jose's son, I'm going to trust you. He's like, I need a cheese platter, right? With some fruit on it. I need the cheese cut this way. He showed me how he wanted the cheese cut. He's like, and I want you to cut the fruit this way. I said, all right. He's like, this is here. This is here. He's like, I got to go dump some coffee. He's like, this is an important tray. This is for Leyva.
Oh, shit.
Right?
Oh, shit.
Who's got the whole, like, 15th floor of the deaconess, like, to himself, right? So I'm like, Leyva, who? What? I don't know who this is.
Chrysler, what are you talking about?
So I start to put this cheese platter together, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do some garnish, because I used to have this garnish book when I was young, and I used to watch my dad do garnish, and I used to practice all the time at home. So, you know, I've got swans and, you know, radish mouses and, you know, strawberry flowers and on this plate, and I wrap it all up and I put it in the fridge, and he comes back and he like looks in the fridge and he's like, holy man, he's like, you do this? And I was like, yeah. So he goes and gets my boss, and guy comes over and he's like, whoa. He's like, I didn't know you could do this. He's like, have you gone to school? And I'm like, no, I'm just got out of high school. You know, it's just a little passion of mine, you know, watching my dad. So that was the last day I worked on the assembly line. And from there, you know, the kitchen was run by Marriott. So, you know, they paid for me to go to school. All I had to do was pay for my books. And, you know, I became a chef just like my dad. And I did it until I got tired.
God bless Leyva.
Yeah. He sent me, I still have the letter. He wrote a letter that out of all, you know, his cheese platters, that was probably the best.
Oh, that's pretty awesome, dude.
Yeah,
that's
I still
great.
have the letter somewhere.
And okay, so I got to ask, like, why did you walk away from that? You just got tired of that kind of life? That's a rough life, man. That's a rough.
It is a rough life, man. It just, you know, if you own a restaurant, the overhead and the amount of waste and stolen product, right? Basically, that you have to deal with is huge. You know what I mean? Unless it's family owned or unless you have people that are trusted, right?
Yeah.
It's just like owning a bait shop, right?
I know. I've heard so many stories. It's not an easy,
You know, there's that. There's the atmosphere. You know what I mean? Just about everybody drinks.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's just
the way it is.
It's too wild for me and for what I love to do. Like, I don't drink. I don't smoke weed. I don't do drugs.
Right.
I don't do any of that because I have to have a clear mind because I'm going fishing for 4 days right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I have to be able to wake up and go. So it didn't work. And I don't know, man. I walked out of work one day and food on your clothes does not smell like food on a plate.
No.
You know what I mean? Like,
no, that grease in a trap is nothing like the food that you served.
No, I don't care what you made and how good that smelled inside the house. What you're wearing smells nowhere near what that meal smells like. And man, like, I could smell it. Like that day had become repulsive. And I literally took off my chef jacket. I threw it in the back of my car and I called work and I said, I'm not coming back. And that was it.
Just dropped the mic.
That was it. I just dropped the mic.
And walked away. All right, listen. Just to finish up, if you were going to give all these guys, I know you do a lot of seminars and stuff like that, but like, what is your philosophy? Like, what do you tell these guys that are getting into sport? What is the most important lesson? There's a lot of lessons in this, but
there is. You know, I think the biggest one is you want to love this sport, right? And whatever you choose to fish for, respect it, right? You don't have to be a catch and release guy. You don't have to listen to all these guys and, you know, don't hold the striper that way. Don't put the boga grips on it. Yeah, there's a million things that you should do to successfully revive a fish or, let a fish go, just letting it go is a 50% chance. I'll take that on anyone. You know what I mean? 2, just have some respect, man. Have respect for those there, those before you, those after you, right? This isn't a show, man. There's no best at this. For everyone that you think is the best, there's 100 guys that you don't know about who do circles around that guy. You know what I mean? Me included, Alberto included. I mean, Alberto's a great fisherman, don't take me wrong, but I know another 100 guys that you don't even know their names that would probably do circles around me, him, and everybody else before us, 1,000 times. And that's it, man. And take it for what it's worth. If you're going to go and fish for food, then fish for food. If you want to do this because you want a name, then be yourself. That's it, man. Be yourself and take what it is. It's not whatever that word would be. It's not all pearls and ribbons or whatever it is.
No, it's not. No, it's not. And I think to some extent you're 100% right, because I always felt that we always revert to mean, and if you're not true to yourself, you're gonna end up there in that place anyway at some point. So just be true to yourself. I mean, if you like chunking, just fucking go chunk. Enjoy yourself.
Exactly.
Don't let somebody tell you that's not the right thing to do. If that's what you like to do, and that makes you happy, and you're gonna be miserable throwing plugs, well, why in the world would you do that? Like, why in the world would you be miserable fishing? You know what I'm saying? Like,
then why go?
Enjoy it.
You know what I mean?
And
if you want to catch big fish, then prepare yourself to lose work, lose relationships, lose sleep. You got to give a lot up. I mean, it's there for the taking. It's not hard in the sense of figuring out what you got to do, right? I mean, you find the structure, you find the bait, you find the tides,
and you make sure you outlast everybody else around you, and eventually you'll get there.
Right. Eventually you'll get there, but you got to put in the time. Like,
you do.
There's no way to do it without putting in the time.
No.
It's tiring.
Yeah. You can do it at one time, but to do it consistently, there's no other way. And I just want to close up on something else. Respect that you said. I think the respect goes to your dad, who was a huge part of what you are.
Definitely.
And I know a big loss to you, and you were very close to him. And I just want to honor him for a second here, because I know people who started on their own where their parents weren't involved, but I also know myself, who my grandfather introduced me, and to this day is guiding light in my life, although he's not around for a long time. I know your dad was the same way.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That means a lot to me.
Yeah, and I know your dad, and I just want to remember him, and I think he has done a great fucking job on you, I tell you that. And listen, thank you for joining us, and next time when you join us, we're going to go over your spots, and
all
right. We go over specifics, okay?
All right. I'm fine with giving some up.
I know. We'll do this again. I just wanted to kind of give your story to people, in a roundabout way. I would love to have you back, and we could talk some specifics about, fall fishing or spring fishing or whatever your idea is. Man. But I think we did good for tonight. So, thanks a lot. Go have you can't have a beer because you don't drink, and you can't have a coffee. So just go fishing.
I might do that. I mean, certainly enough. I might do that.
Good night, Roy.
Good night, Zeno. Thank you.